I had to give birth to triplets alone after my husband fled with his mistress. That night was unnaturally quiet, with stars blazing intensely in the sky. A soft breeze carried a delightful coolness, making everything seem like an invitation to rest. But I couldn't settle, tossing and turning endlessly in bed. The serene exterior stood in stark contrast to the storm of anxiety and thoughts raging inside my mind. Sleep was an impossible dream for me. Being pregnant with triplets was never going to be easy, especially as my due date approached. My husband Daniel lay beside me, deep in peaceful slumber. While I battled sleeplessness, he breathed evenly, without a care in the world. My eyes were wide open, a slight anger building as I stared at him. I couldn't help remembering how desperately he had wanted children. The irony of our situation wasn't lost on me. Here I was, suffering through sleeplessness and the discomforts of advancing pregnancy, while he slept so tranquilly. The 3 babies inside me seemed determined to ensure I didn't rest. "Why can't you be still in there?" I whispered to myself. From then on, I'd always have to prioritize them over myself. A wave of anxiety and sadness washed over me. I sighed and turned to the other side of the bed, searching for comfort. Every movement felt like a challenge, each position offering only a momentary glimpse of relief before vanishing. I knew how to use pillows to create a comfortable sleeping position. I'd strategically place them between my legs, under my belly, and behind my back to provide nighttime support. But as my pregnancy progressed, my growing belly made these techniques less effective. The pillows that once brought me comfort now felt like an uncomfortable maze, unable to accommodate my changing body. I tried closing my eyes, attempting to invoke a sense of relaxation. But the constant movement in my belly kept reminding me of my new reality. My battle with sleeplessness felt already lost. After several unsuccessful attempts to find a comfortable position, I decided to leave the bed and make some tea in the kitchen. Though tired, I knew sleep was impossible, so I thought enjoying a hot cup of tea on the sofa would be my best option. Daniel remained completely unaware of my discomfort, sleeping peacefully beside me. The irony of life was clear. I would soon be struggling alone with 3 babies. The thought of triplets filled me with overwhelming terror. How would I manage everything? Could I even handle this situation? In the dim kitchen, the water for my tea began to boil. These thoughts swirled relentlessly in my mind. On nights like these, the weight of reality pressed down on me, with incredible force. The impending birth filled me with fear. Potential complications after delivery were my primary concern. I still remembered the shock of discovering I was carrying triplets. And Daniel's reaction to the news. It was after our first ultrasound, leaving the doctor's office. I had embraced my husband, whispering, "I love you." Can you imagine? We're having triplets. 3 wonderful children. When Daniel heard about the triplets, his reaction was immediate and harsh. "Triplets? We're not prepared for this. It's impossible to have so many children at once," he said, his voice laced with anger and obvious anxiety. I looked at him with a smile that transcended the situation's severity, hope shining in my eyes. "I love you. Everything will be okay," I said softly, my voice steady and reassuring. I didn't ask God for triplets. But some things happen suddenly. "We'll get through this together, remember? We'll find a way to make it work." My words were calm, but they carried an undeniable determination. Daniel frowned, his forehead etched with doubt, unable to hide his dissatisfaction. Together, he repeated, his tone dripping with irritation. "Listen, my job is already a burden for both of us. And you know how essential I am at work. Just thinking about 3 children makes me feel like I'll have no time left for anything." His voice tried to sound strong, but he couldn't mask the deep anxiety underneath. It wasn't just about his professional future, but the fear of losing the lifestyle he had grown accustomed to. For Daniel, career and personal time had always been his priority. The idea of sharing his already limited free time was almost unbearable to him. "This is impossible," he muttered while walking home. "It's not fun anymore. What if we run out of money? What if I lose my job? This is not the kind of father I wanted to be." Of course, I understood his concerns, but I couldn't change our situation. It was proof that life rarely goes according to plan. From that moment, Daniel became a different person, no longer hiding his resentment and dissatisfaction. Our conversations were now filled with persistent pessimism, each word reflecting his fear of a chaotic future with noisy children and endless demands. In his mind, scattered toys and piled-up dishes symbolized the impending chaos, forgetting the potential joy children could bring. Daniel had lost sight of his purpose, trapped in the belief that he was the family's sole support. The hopeful, enthusiastic image of fatherhood vanished like magic, replaced by an overwhelming sense of responsibility. This gradual change distanced him from me and everything we once shared. He showed no care for me, even though I was going through an incredibly difficult time. Despite his indifference, the first few months of pregnancy were far from easy for me. Morning sickness exhausted me, stealing my energy. Constant nausea and heightened sensitivity to smells turned once pleasant aromas into sources of pain, making daily life increasingly challenging. Seemingly endless fatigue often forced me to take breaks, interrupting my daily activities. Though I tried to remain positive, these symptoms constantly reminded me of pregnancy's physical challenges. Without emotional support from my husband, I felt incredibly lonely. Daniel would look at my suffering with a hint of sarcasm, sometimes even displaying explicit contempt. This only worsened my discomfort. Using financial constraints as an excuse, he imposed numerous restrictions on me during pregnancy, as if I were a burden on our household. "Rachel, you're not looking good," Daniel said, casting a contemptuous glance at me. "You'll probably get even fatter after giving birth," he added cruelly. During family meals, he would dramatically mimic my movements and breathing, causing some family members to laugh at my expense. Their callous attitude towards my pain cut deeper than any physical discomfort I was experiencing. Daniel began going out every night, using the excuse that I needed to escape. He would leave me alone at home, claiming that the suffocating atmosphere was my fault. "The pressure and the home environment you're creating is unbearable," he would say. These actions not only demonstrated his lack of empathy and support, but pushed me further into isolation and despair. "These are just temporary difficulties," I would respond, my eyes welling with tears. "I promise I'll get my body back. We'll get through this." But convincing Daniel was nearly impossible. Crushed by pain, I couldn't help but vividly remember how desperately Daniel had wanted children. He had repeatedly talked about wanting an heir, pushing me towards this decision. This was despite my own slight reservations. I had once dreamed of completing my college degree before getting married, but Daniel's persistent demands had rushed me into matrimony. The moment I said, "I do," at the altar, a new pressure descended on my shoulders. The pressure to give Daniel children. I understood that his friends had mercilessly teased him about his perceived infertility, driving him to feel he needed to prove his masculinity. Their words had brought him anger and despair, creating an urgent desire to demonstrate his manhood. Now, on the verge of becoming a father, he was seen as a hero by those around him. But he was completely unaware of the emotional destruction this was causing me. The irony was suffocating. The very thing he had desperately wanted was now becoming a source of immense pain for both of us.
In the shadows of passion and betrayal, a devastating secret lurked beneath the surface of Daniel and Rachel's seemingly ordinary life. While Rachel carried their triplets, her husband was living a double life that would soon shatter their world. Fate had introduced Daniel to Jasmine, a young woman with piercing blue eyes and copper-colored hair who would become his undoing. Jasmine was no ordinary mistress, she was a calculating temptress with ambitions that burned brighter than any moral constraint. To her, Daniel was merely a stepping stone to the social circles she craved, his marriage nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. Daniel, blinded by her magnetic allure, saw only the momentary excitement, completely oblivious to the destruction brewing. "How long are you going to stay with that woman?" Jasmine would purr, her voice dripping with calculated seduction. "You deserve a young, beautiful woman, not some pregnant cow," she'd mock, a cruel laugh dancing in her eyes. Daniel would frown, uncertain, asking, "What do you suggest? How do we change this situation?" "It's simple," Jasmine would reply coldly. "Just get a divorce. Let that naive woman handle the children on her own." Her words were a knife, sharp and merciless. Daniel hesitated, fear gripping his heart, but not from love or compassion. His terror was financial, the thought of splitting his hard-earned assets a nightmare he couldn't bear. Little did he know, his careless indiscretion would soon be his downfall. Stephen Jones, the company's president, would become an unexpected witness to his betrayal. On an ordinary Friday afternoon, Stephen spotted Daniel walking hand in hand with Jasmine, laughing without a care in the world. "That's definitely not his wife," Stephen thought, recalling Rachel from a recent Christmas party. A sense of unease settled in his stomach as he watched the seemingly happy couple. He knew he shouldn't interfere, but something about the situation felt fundamentally wrong. Stephen remembered a brief conversation with Rachel in the office. She was intelligent, gracious, and certainly did not deserve such treatment. The stage was set for a drama that would change everything. Stephen wrestled with his conscience, torn between intervention and discretion. He knew the perils of meddling in another's marital affairs, yet the image of Daniel's betrayal burned in his mind. Should he reveal the truth to Rachel? The moral dilemma consumed him like a relentless fire. Fate, however, had its own dramatic plans. At the very moment Daniel and Jasmine were laughing intimately in a cozy cafe corner, oblivious to the world, Rachel was experiencing something far more profound. The first contractions of labor began to ripple through her body, a powerful reminder of life's unpredictable nature. Her body was preparing to bring 3 new lives into a world unaware of the impending storm of betrayal. Each wave of pain was a testament to her strength, a silent rebellion against the husband who had abandoned her. The universe seemed to orchestrate a moment of incredible irony, Daniel celebrating his infidelity while his wife entered the most vulnerable and powerful moment of her life. Little did he know that everything was about to change. The delicate threads of his carefully constructed deception were about to unravel, revealing the true character beneath his polished exterior. And Rachel, in her moment of physical vulnerability, would soon demonstrate a resilience that would shake the very foundations of their fractured relationship.
I was alone at home, the silence echoing my isolation. My body suddenly signaled that the triplets were ready to enter the world. With my husband nowhere to be found, I knew I had to act quickly and calmly. I grabbed the phone and called a taxi service, fighting through relentless waves of pain while trying to maintain my composure. Within minutes, the taxi arrived outside my home. Driven by a strength only a mother about to give birth could understand, I climbed into the car and gave the hospital address. Each minute felt like an eternity, and with every mile the taxi traveled, the reality of Daniel's absence hit me harder. My sense of vulnerability grew with each passing moment. I tried calling Daniel, but he didn't answer. En route to the hospital, I attempted to send him a message urging him to come quickly. But as the pain intensified, I lost my concentration and accidentally sent the message to someone else. Perhaps it was fate. The message was meant to reach someone with a kind heart. It was Stephen, the contact I had saved after meeting him in the office months ago. I had occasionally called him to check on Daniel when he worked late. In the cold, sterile hospital room, I writhed in pain alone. Medical staff moved swiftly, preparing for the birth while trying to comfort me. The white, impersonal hospital walls seemed to close in on me, as I desperately tried to focus. God, where is he? Why won't he answer? I repeated, drenched in sweat. My body ached, my heart was breaking, and the weight of impending motherhood pressed down on me like an immovable force.
In the quiet intensity of a pivotal moment, Stephen found himself staring at an unexpected message from Daniel's wife. The cryptic text lingered in his mind, its urgent plea echoing through his thoughts. "Come to the hospital immediately, labor has begun," the message read, a cry for help that he couldn't ignore. Something within Stephen stirred, a mixture of concern and unexpected compassion. "I should go," he whispered to himself. "Even if it's a mistake, at least I'll have tried to help." His sense of duty propelled him into action. With remarkable speed, he shut down his computer, grabbed his car keys, and rushed out of the office. "Take me to the hospital, and fast," he instructed his driver, his voice tinged with an uncharacteristic urgency. As the car raced through the city streets, Stephen's anxiety grew. He imagined a vulnerable woman facing a challenging moment alone, her husband mysteriously absent. The hospital corridors seemed to pulse with anticipation as he arrived. A nurse greeted him with a warm smile, mistaking him for the expectant father. "Congratulations on your triplets," she beamed. Stephen, caught off guard, blushed and stammered, "Oh, no, I'm just a family friend." The nurse's expression shifted, a hint of judgment crossing her features. "Then where is the real father?" she asked. "These beautiful babies have been born, and no one's here." Stephen could only shrug, a mix of embarrassment and determination etching his face. Moments later, he stood beside Rachel's bed, witnessing a moment of profound vulnerability and strength. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next.
I was exhausted but filled with an overwhelming joy I had never experienced before. My eyes sparkled with happiness, and a radiant smile spread across my face. When I noticed Stephen, I immediately bombarded him with questions. I asked him why he was there and if something had happened to Daniel, my voice betraying my deep anxiety and vulnerability. Stephen looked relieved and tried to calm me down, telling me that as far as he knew, nothing was wrong. He assured me that Daniel would surely appear and urged me to rest and take care of myself. He promised to find Daniel for me, his voice gentle and reassuring. As he approached the small bassinet where my 3 tiny babies slept peacefully, something changed in his demeanor. His face turned pale, and suddenly, uncontrollable tears began streaming down his cheeks. In that moment, I saw a depth of emotion in Stephen that went far beyond simple kindness. His tears seemed to carry a weight of something profound, perhaps a hidden pain, a lost dream, or a connection I couldn't yet understand. The sight of those tiny, innocent lives seemed to touch something deep within his soul.
In the tender silence of the hospital room, tiny newborn eyes flickered open, awakening memories buried deep within Stephen's wounded heart. These fragile beings stirred memories of dreams once shared with his late wife, dreams of building a family that had been cruelly snatched away by her untimely death from cancer. He remembered their whispered conversations about nursery colors, baby names, and future family vacations, all now ghostly echoes of what might have been. Those innocent, newly born souls triggered a profound grief within him, a sorrow for experiences forever lost. At the same time, a fierce anger burned against Daniel, who seemed willing to discard his entire family for a fleeting affair. "Let's see what you have to say about this," Stephen muttered under his breath, his emotions a turbulent storm of pain and resolve. Determined to confront Daniel and his mistress, he set out to find them at their usual cafe, his heart heavy with unspoken judgments. But destiny had other plans. The cafe was eerily quiet, Daniel and Jasmine nowhere to be found. Staff members could offer no insight, leaving Stephen consumed by frustration and a growing sense of helplessness. The next day brought no answers. Daniel had vanished completely, without explanation or contact. Undeterred, Stephen arrived at the hospital bearing white roses, remembering Rachel's fondness for them, and a bag of carefully selected toys for the triplets. He was a man on a mission, determined to provide warmth and support in this crucial moment. Rachel greeted him with grateful, tender eyes, sensing the depth of compassion behind his actions. What neither of them knew was the shocking truth behind Daniel's sudden disappearance. He wasn't sick or injured, but deeply engrossed in divorce proceedings, aided by his calculating mistress Jasmine. She was determined to be more than a mere second option, willing to stake everything on her relationship with Daniel. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation that would change everything.
During those first weeks after giving birth, I poured every ounce of my energy into caring for my precious 3 babies. I worried and felt anger about Daniel's complete silence, unable to comprehend why he had suddenly disappeared. Deep in my heart, I sensed that he was unhappy about becoming a father to triplets and that his feelings towards me had fundamentally changed. In the days that followed, Stephen became an unexpected beacon of hope and support. He would arrive at the hospital early each morning, bringing small gifts designed to brighten my stay, magazines, my favorite desserts, and other thoughtful items that went far beyond mere courtesy. I found myself profoundly grateful for his unconditional support, gradually learning to trust Stephen and see him as someone I could genuinely rely on. Our conversations were filled with honesty and deep empathy, becoming a sanctuary for my wounded heart during Daniel's inexplicable absence. With each visit, Stephen demonstrated the qualities of what a truly compassionate father could be. His dedication and sense of responsibility stood in stark contrast to Daniel's complete abandonment. This difference was painfully obvious to me, and amid my worry and exhaustion, I began to feel a deep sense of gratitude and respect for Stephen. I started to see him not just as a friend, but as a potential true companion for me and my children. 2 weeks passed, and Daniel never once visited or even called. My initial worry transformed into a profound disappointment. I realized that his silence was more than mere indifference. It was clear evidence of his complete lack of care and responsibility towards me and our children.
In the shadows of betrayal, Daniel moved with calculated precision, exploiting Rachel's vulnerability. His heart cold as steel, he raced through divorce proceedings with a ruthless determination that would shatter their once promising life. To him, their marriage was nothing more than a temporary inconvenience, a burden to be cast aside as quickly as possible. While Rachel lay in the hospital, nurturing their newborn triplets, Daniel was systematically dismantling their entire relationship. He saw their marriage as an intolerable situation demanding immediate resolution, his actions driven by a merciless self-interest that knew no bounds. The wheels of their separation were turning with a speed that would soon crush Rachel's remaining hopes and dreams. Unbeknownst to her, by the time she would leave the hospital, she would no longer be Daniel's wife, a brutal fact waiting to unleash its devastating impact. The legal machinery of divorce was already in motion, its gears grinding away at the last threads of their connection, preparing to deliver a final, crushing blow to Rachel's world. Little did she know that while she was recovering and caring for their children, Daniel was meticulously planning her complete elimination from his life.
I returned home to find a letter from Daniel on the dining table. His cold, distant handwriting revealed a devastating confession about falling in love with the younger, more beautiful and interesting woman. The letter made it brutally clear that he intended to completely sever ties not just with me, but with our triplets as well. It was a cruel dismissal of the life we had built together, cut away in an instant. This final blow marked the end of our marriage and the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Stephen was nearby, and I could sense something had changed in his demeanor. He told me not to worry, that he would help me, and that Daniel would no longer work at his company. A glimmer of gratitude lit up my eyes. In the months that followed, our lives, Stephen's, mine, and the triplets, began to intertwine like a beautiful, harmonious melody. The difficult days and long nights transformed into moments of intimacy and shared love, each of the children's small milestones a blessing. As I watched Stephen's endless support and gentleness, I gradually began to heal my wounded heart. Together, we built a home filled with laughter, undeniably becoming a happy and deeply bonded family. Stephen had decided that from the moment he first saw me after giving birth, something had shifted within him. What attracted him wasn't just my appearance, but the strength and determination that resided in my eyes, even in the midst of adversity. The way I cared for the triplets with unconditional love and infinite patience had awakened a deep respect and admiration in him. With each grateful smile I offered, his feelings for me grew deeper. Now that Daniel was gone, Stephen was determined to prove himself as a true support, an unconditional friend, and potentially something more. He understood that healing my wounded heart would take time, but he was prepared to do anything for me and the children. He was eagerly anticipating the day when he would be fully accepted as a member of our family.
In the cruel theater of consequences, Daniel found himself face to face with the devastating aftermath of his reckless choices. Jasmine, who had once appeared as a tempting escape from responsibility, revealed herself to be a merciless predator of his dreams and finances. Her insatiable hunger for luxury consumed Daniel's wealth with breathtaking speed, driving him relentlessly toward financial ruin. Like a beautiful but deadly siren, she had lured him away from his family, promising freedom and passion, only to drain him of everything he possessed. When Daniel could no longer satisfy her expensive tastes, Jasmine discarded him without a second thought. Suddenly, he was alone, abandoned, broke, and facing a future as bleak and empty as a desert at midnight. No family, no friends, no support remained. The man who had once believed he could have everything now found himself with nothing, trapped in a prison of his own making. His once promising life had crumbled into a landscape of regret and despair, with no path of redemption in sight. The very woman he had betrayed his family for had become the architect of his complete destruction.
One afternoon, while sipping coffee, I found myself reflecting on my journey. I looked at Stephen and wondered why I hadn't realized earlier how truly kind and compassionate a person could be. He was an honest man who would soon become my husband, a partner who understood me in ways Daniel never could. As I finished my coffee, a sense of profound peace settled into my heart. The immense pain of being abandoned by Daniel had ultimately led me to someone who truly loved me and could make me happy. In that moment, I understood that true love doesn't have to be perfect, nor does it arrive at a precisely calculated time. Love simply needs to be genuine and mutual. I sat on the white garden bench, basking in the gentle afternoon sunlight, watching my 3 children playing on the lawn. 2 years had passed since those difficult times, and the pain that once consumed me had transformed into a source of strength. "Mama, look," my eldest, Leia, called out, running towards me with a beautiful flower bouquet, with twins Chloe and Aiden following close behind. Their innocent smiles warmed my heart completely. "What a lovely bunch of flowers," I smiled, thinking about how we'd display them when Stephen came home. Stephen had become more than just a new partner, he was a true father to my children. His kindness and devoted love had healed our past wounds and embraced our entire family. Our wedding was small but heartfelt, and Stephen had formally adopted the triplets, becoming their legal and emotional father. I'd occasionally hear rumors about Daniel's drastically changed life in a small provincial town, far removed from his previous glamorous existence. But I no longer felt any attachment to his story. My anger and resentment had quietly transformed into forgiveness. People must face the consequences of their choices, I whispered to myself. I was proud of my life now, a mother to 3 wonderful children and a successful editor building a new career. As evening approached and Stephen returned from work, we gathered around the dinner table. The children excitedly shared stories from their day, and Stephen listened with gentle attention. "We're happy, aren't we?" I said, softly squeezing his hand. He smiled and nodded. "Meeting you was the greatest fortune of my life." Looking at my children, I felt a calm strength in my eyes, the glow of a woman who had overcome past pain, discovered her own worth, and found true love. That night, gazing at the stars from our bedroom balcony, I felt a deep sense of peace. The stars seemed to shine, blessing my new life. I was truly free. The family photo on our living room shelf captured our happiness, Stephen, the children, and me. I was proud of my choices and, most importantly, had learned to love myself. My life is just beginning, I smiled at the starry sky. Tomorrow will be another day, full of hope and endless possibilities.